I grew up in a country town in Arkansas, Center Ridge. I'm the middle of two sisters, so I'm a middle child. And actually, all three of us went into communications. My older sister was a broadcast journalism major. She worked at KTV for years, and now she's in media relations at UAMS. And my younger sister was a radio TV major, and now she's working at a news station in Kansas City. So for some reason, we all went into that communications field. And so that's my upbringing. I went to Arkansas Tech. That's where I met my husband, and we've been married 10 years. It's a long time now. And as far as hobbies and interests, I'm one of those people who can never answer that question very well, but there are things I like to do. I mean, I enjoy reading. I don't read as much as I should, but I enjoy that. And also just playing games. We have tons of board games, so we play games every once in a while with friends and family. So. My first job was in 2007 at Winthrop Rockefeller Institute on Petit Jean Mountain. I started as an intern and then I became permanent, and it was a fairly new organization. It used to be Windrock International, and then they switched to the Institute. So I was on the ground floor of them kind of creating that mission for, what's now the Educational Institute and Conference Center up there. So it was a great experience, and but I felt kind of isolated. I was, fresh out of college, and I was literally working on a mountaintop, but that's how I got involved with PRSA. They let me work from home once a week. I mean, not once a week, I'm sorry. They let me work from home once a month to go to the PRSA meetings, and that allowed me to get connected to people in the industry. And from there, I started working at the Conway Area Chamber of Commerce, which is much closer to home than Petit Jean was, and I've been here 6 years, and I've enjoyed it. It's kind of weird, kind of embarrassing story, but I don't know if you watch Days of Our Lives, but there's a character there named Carrie Brady, and she did public relations for a hospital. And I didn't know what it was. I was like, that sounds cool. And then so I briefly looked it up in the occupational handbook at school. I was like, oh, they make pretty good. And then I thought it was more like writing jingles and writing ad jingles, because I always liked that kind of stuff. And then so I decided to pursue it, and little did I know it was very heavily on the writing and things like that. So it ended up being a good fit, even though I chose it kind of blindly. So I double majored in communication and journalism with a PR emphasis when I went to college. And so it was a fictional TV character that first put PR on my radar. And so that's how I got into it, but I'm glad I stuck around. In my role here at the Chamber, I'm responsible for our Conway Publications arm. It's a for-profit entity that we do that allows us to create publications and sell advertising. So we have an annual resource guide that goes out, and a college publication called Off Campus for students who come to college in Conway, so they can see what the city has to offer. And I also am responsible for social media and, of course, writing and editing and helping with event marketing communications, like photography, or helping assist with production of promo pieces for events. So we do a lot of events here, so I assist them, and also the publication side and social media and things like that. It's a lot of fun. We have a neat culture here. We're a very close-knit organization. We have a culture where the president CEO will scare people, hide behind the corner or something like that. So it's a very fun work environment. I enjoy it here. And it's also a lot of autonomy. I'm able to kind of work at my pace and create what I want to create. I'm free to do different things. There's not a whole lot of checks and balances, oh, you can't do this with this approval. They allow you to be free to create, and they trust us to do a good job. So we have a good team here. I have a lot of business role models in the PR industry and also professionally. There's just people. I mean, I know a type of person I tend to gravitate toward is usually a woman who's very outspoken, and I mean, you could be one. A woman who's very outspoken and gets her job done. I always look up to people like that, because I'm one who I may shy away if I have an opinion or not want to speak my mind, but I look up to people who who seem to manage, career and personal life and are able to, stand up for what's right and and get the job done and also have fun. And I know it's very vague, but I can't think of any one person where I look up to, but I have a lot of people that I learn from. I think the PR industry, PRSA, they do a good job with their diversity initiatives. I haven't really dove into that, but some of the, like this being Diversity Month, but as far as like what we're doing as an actual industry standpoint, I think one way we could make it better is maybe taking the focus away from what is called cosmetic diversity, because I think we're all very aware that it doesn't look good to have all white men on your panel or all white men on your board or no minorities in place anywhere. But sometimes we know to include minorities, but we do it in a way that makes our companies look good, but are we really taking their perspectives on things? So I think just looking at maybe barriers that are keeping people from entering the field, looking what's keeping minorities from getting involved in PRSA, I think it's more than just including them for the sake of having color, but we also need to consider their perspectives of how things may be different for a person of color. Maybe when people don't see people who look like them, they may tend to think that's not for me. I know our industry years ago was heavily male, and that was very heavy female. But you kind of think of a certain person, and I know we're talking about ethnic diversity, but even for me, I'm a very introverted person who doesn't fit the bill as a party planner, PR type, the stereotype of PR. I don't fit that, and so if you couple that with the fact that I'm a Black woman, that can kind of shy you away from being in the industry. So I think we just need to, maybe get rid of some old stereotypes that we cling to, like PR people have to be outspoken and fun and bubbly, and because that conjures a certain type of person, when you think of that. So I think maybe showing that you can be introverted, you don't have to drink coffee, you don't have to do whatever we say that you have to do to be in PR. So I think just not seeing yourself represented in the industry, because we're very typecast as PR professionals. So I think that's one hindrance to people getting involved in it. Shows like Scandal, I think, are helping kind of break those barriers down, which again, that may be reinforcing a negative stereotype of PR, but I was an adjunct professor at UCA for one year, and I noticed a lot of Black students who were taking their first PR class, like it was an intro to PR class I was teaching. And I didn't go to UCA, so I wasn't familiar with the demographic makeup, but I noticed it was heavy with, there were Black men in the class and also a lot of Black women. And I think, I'm assuming that Scandal may have played a role in that, and only because I didn't do any official research, but just based on the conversations, Scandal would come up in conversation, the class discussions, and I know a lot of people watch the show, so I think just like Carrie Brady, was a fictional character that led me to PR, I think Scandal was kind of opening the doors for people to see that, okay, well, she's a boss and she's a PR professional, so I can do that too. Yeah, I think as we talked about earlier, PR is kind of seen as a certain type of profession that fits a certain type of person. So I think with a focus on publicity and being chasing around some celebrity and trying to get them to spin something for the cameras, that may be a barrier for people. But I think once I got into PR, I knew what it was about. My favorite part of it was that you can use it to change things. So I think now with this generation, we're seeing a lot of people who are interested in social change. And I think if they knew that PR could help with that by changing attitudes and opinions, I think that would be a great fit for people. If we push that narrative that if you want to make a difference in your community or in your state or in this nation, PR is a good way to do that, because you can change attitudes and opinions and move the needle in a way that can make a difference. I know scholarships would be one way, like maybe more scholarships targeting minority students. That would maybe a way to get more people to pursue PR. And I think mentoring internships would be a good way to get students of color more involved in PR. because that will open, again, it's representation. You see people who look like you, who are in the industry. Having this series that you're doing, that's a good way to showcase professionals in Arkansas who are doing the work, and whether we're working for minority-owned firms or companies or institutions that are predominantly white, when they see people of color in these roles, I think that helps them to maybe minority students to say, I can do that too. I think one change I would make to our industry, again, it goes back to the way we're seen in the media, and it's not getting any better, with the current issues from the administration sometimes when it comes to how communication directors are, alternative facts, things like that. So I think just changing the way we're perceived and focusing more on what we do to change things versus how we can spin a story, I think that will help the industry overcome that stereotype that it has, and then maybe that will encourage more people to get into it. Yes, I think there's benefits to promoting diversity and inclusion in the PR industry because, for me, I went to a predominantly white high school. I went to a college that was predominantly white. So I never really felt, I was always the only one. So it was never that intimidating for me to kind of go in spaces that are like historically white spaces, I guess. But I know for a lot of people that is. If you're from a community that's more, urban, and you went to a school with a lot more people who look like you, it can be intimidating to go to a PRSA meeting or to go into a business and say you want an internship. So I think it's important for us to make people feel like they're welcome and that they can be their authentic selves when they do go to one of these companies and not have to act a certain way or to be involved and to be seen as, to be taken seriously. I think there's work to be done as far as creating a diverse and inclusive environment. I think we're making strides to get there, but I think that there's still more work to do. We're seeing surface level stuff. We know that we need to include Black and brown people. We need to include women and any people of color and minorities. But we also need to look at structures and examine why people may not be getting involved in the industry and listen to perspectives of people of color who are in the industry versus assuming that everyone's the same. We need to get away from we need to be less colorblind as we got used to being for so long. Sometimes you're just, as African Americans and as people of color, we're constantly thinking about being a minority, and it's not a bad thing. It's just something that's part of us. So, but sometimes you forget how other people see you until little microaggressions or something comes out. But recently, I was at I work for a Chamber of Commerce, so I was at an opening of a minority-owned restaurant, and I was assisting the person doing the ribbon cutting by taking pictures, and which is something I typically do. And everyone who worked for the restaurant was Black mostly, and they were wearing their customary red shirts to match their brand, So the workers had on red shirts. There was a person doing the ribbon cutting who was for the chamber, and I was working for the chamber, and I was wearing my normal clothes. So at the end of the ribbon cutting, I was, doing our customary thing where we signed the ribbon, and then someone well-meaning, just making chit-chat with me, an older white gentleman, he said, "Oh, why aren't you wearing your red shirt today?" And it was very innocent statement, and my mind was racing because I didn't want him to feel bad, because I knew as soon as I said, "Well, I don't work for this company, I work for the chamber," he would have felt bad. So I just was like, I guess I could have worn red today, and I just kind of left it alone. But I think that his assumption that I would work for that company because it was mostly Black employees, it made sense. But it just kind of showed his assumption that there's no way I could have worked for the chamber, or there's no way I could have worked for even the newspaper. I had to work for, the restaurant. So it wasn't, it didn't insult me that he didn't know who I was or anything like that. It was just the underlying assumption that, well, there's no way she could work for the Chamber of Commerce, which does ribbon cuttings, So I didn't handle it the way I wanted to, but you have to, sometimes we know we have to work with people. In my role here, you have to, you don't want to affect your company. You don't want to do things to step on toes. So sometimes we have to kind of swallow things and be quiet. And I knew that he wasn't coming from a bad place, but I had an opportunity to enlighten him, but I didn't do it. So I regretted not doing that, but I also knew that I had to tread carefully. So it's always a tough battle, like being an African-American woman in our industry. Even when you're just doing something as tactical as taking pictures, you realize that you're seen as, not a director of communications for a chamber, but just like, oh, I work for this company. And it wasn't really in no insult to working for a restaurant or anything like that. It's just a perception that, she works for the black company and not the historically white one. So. As a black woman who works in PR, sometimes you feel like you have to kind of hide yourself or assimilate a little more to be taken seriously. But I think I want to be a black woman who works in PR, but I want people to see that. But also I don't want them to make assumptions because of that or make judgment calls because of that. So it's kind of a tough line to walk. Like, I want to be seen as my full self, but I don't want to be, taken less seriously because I'm a black woman or not seen as credible or something like that, whatever assumption people will make about that. But I do want to be seen as a black woman. So it's kind of like I want to be seen as my full self but not judged by that. I thank y'all for doing this series about diversity in PR, and I'm honored to be a part of it. And I think it's very important to tell stories of different people, and from your perspective, like people have different ethnic minorities who are in PR. So I think what you're doing is important, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I think it will help people to see just the full facet of what public relations is, and how we can help. By telling our own stories, we can help our companies tell their stories.